What's up, Lego builders? Welcome back to Coconut Brick Studios. One thing I've long found fascinating about Star Wars is how a brief battle or scene can cement itself in history and spawn hours of storytelling, and of course some great memes. The Battle of Kashyyyk has just over 60 seconds of screen time in Revenge of the Sith, and yet it's inspired so many Lego sets, minifigs, and Mocs. Today, I'm tapping into that storytelling goldmine and building 3 increasingly bigger Mocs on the jungle planet of Kashyyyk. Things are gonna get fiery, so grab some shades, don't forget to execute order 66 on that like button, and let's get building. I'm tired of using traditional base plates, so I'm building the first Moc on this cool little freeform base I built a while ago. I want to depict a 41st scouting patrol deep in the jungle charting out some new territory on Kashyyyk, so I'm going to blanket the Moc with foliage. The jungles of Kashyyyk are a melting pot of different types of flora, so on the other half I'm going to do a bamboo grove. I've been playing around with different bamboo designs over the years, and this one is quite pleasing, with the 3 leaf plant pieces providing some nice color contrast. I could do a whole video building different types of foliage, but that would be about as exciting as watching Master Windu and Ki-Adi-Mundi having a stare down. Jeez. In this Moc, I want to represent the brutal nature of war and its destructive effect, not just on people, but the land as well. So at one end of the grove is a patch of torched, blackened bamboo. At the back of the Moc, a scout consults a map with Commander Gree. And speaking of destruction, this clone is going full Ki-Adi-Mundi on the bamboo with a flamethrower. Here we have a squad burning their way through a particularly thick patch of jungle as they scout out the land. I love a good jungle build, and having a quality pre-built base to start on elevated this Moc and just made the whole process a lot more enjoyable than I thought it would. I was able to spend more time planning and building the actual Moc instead of worrying about if the freeform base was turning out alright or if it was just ugly. And speaking of ugly, this next Moc didn't have a pre-built frame, so I'm going to start from scratch. I went ahead and laid out what I want the shape to be and started rounding off the sides. This is the most critical part of the build because you need the slopes and other pieces to fit together right in order to get a smooth, unified looking shape for the base, which is hard to do when shooting a time lapse since I often need to take my time designing good shapes and will need to pull up pieces and start over, which doesn't make for good filming. So I went with a really simple method here, just running slopes and brick around the edges, trying to smooth it out as best I could. Waves crashing up on a beach often leave wavy lines in the sand, so I'm going to throw in a couple rows of wedge plates to represent that. I'm building the iconic beach charge from the Battle of Kashyyyk, which surprisingly is my first time attempting this scene outside of micro scale. In this scene, we see Wookiees flexing their might on the oncoming droid forces as they charge forward out of their defenses to meet the droids, which if you think about it is kind of weird. Why build the defenses just to leave them behind? That would be like if the clones rolled up to the front lines in their turbo tanks, then parked them on the side and attacked the clones on foot. If you're wondering why I've never done a large-scale Kashyyyk Moc, well, one reason is this little Moc is using about 2/3 of my Wookiee figs, and there are only 2 Wookiees here, so I'll let you do the math on that one. This Moc was more frustrating than the first one. I've already talked about the struggles of freeform base building, and I wanted to add tan plate to the upper portion of the beach to represent dark wet sand transitioning to the lighter dry sand further up, but my Tan's part collection is pretty meager and I was really struggling for motivation while building this one, so I gave up on that idea. But honestly, it turned out better than I thought it would. Using the vibrant blue pieces is always a cheat code to make your Mocs look better. Alright, I've done a couple small builds and now it's time to level up and capture a more macro scale depiction of Kashyyyk. I'm going real big with this one so I can squeeze a turbo tank into the build, since is it really a Kashyyyk challenge if there's no battering ram on wheels? Just kidding, I've seen plenty of good ones without turbo tanks. Honestly, I feel like those were a bit impractical in that battle. We see them charging forward, missile tubes blazing, but what happens when they get to the water's edge? Do they back up and drive forward again? The clones and the Wookiees were on the defensive, so what's the point of leaving the security of fortifications if you have no objective to take? I feel like some AV7s and ATTEs would have been more effective in this situation. Don't worry, I'll explain all this to George Lucas next time I see him and we'll get a remastered version of the battle out ASAP. If you couldn't already tell, I'm not a huge fan of that battle, so I'm once again creating my own story with this Moc. It takes place on the banks of a giant river, which I am just now finishing up. I'm so sick of building with reddish brown. I think it's such a great looking color to work with, but the pieces are just so brittle. I heard so much snapping and cracking while making these walls, I thought someone was in the room eating a bowl of Rice Krispies. Because the ground is raised up so high, I have to add a bunch of foundational pillars so I can build the rest of the terrain. This is my least favorite part of building raised up Mocs. It's so tedious and takes forever. And if I miss one pillar, then the plates bow in that spot when I'm trying to build on them later, which is super annoying. But for some reason, I feel like most of my builds end up being raised above the ground at a decent height. So I guess at least I'm getting lots of practice. Once the plates are in, I can fill in the gap between them and the riverbank. After that, I can throw down a layer of green and cover up any ugly patches with plate. Drop a comment down below with a suggestion suggestion for what planet or scene I should build in the next challenge. I wasn't a huge fan of the Star Wars Acolyte TV show, but there were a few things that I thought were cool. There was a Wookiee Jedi who lives in a hut out in the middle of nowhere. I don't know what he did to not go crazy with boredom, but I like the idea. So on one side of the river will be a small hut for a Wookiee hermit. Not a mystical Jedi or anything, just a chill guy who likes to fish and occasionally scare nearby tribes. I built a round frame out of plate and used a pattern of cylinder stacks and regular brick to build the hut walls. And you could also use this design to make a deleted scene of Chewie and Yoda meeting for the first time. When building round structures, I've come to learn that the walls and foundation are the easy part. The real challenge is the roof. I took some inspiration from the LEGO Ideas treehouse and connected a series of plates together via mixel joints. This should allow me to bend the panels in a way that somewhat matches the shape of the hut. This took some trial and error, but I came up with a pretty successful design that consists of 3 main panels with wedge plates on each corner. I'm sure if I spent more time on this, I could have come up with a cleaner design, but I have a trick up my sleeve for disjointed builds like this. Plant pieces. They work perfectly for covering up imperfections while still allowing you to see the overall build. A chimney would also make sense on a roof like this and add some extra world building, which this green blob of a build really needs. I'm using the large tree leaf pieces covered in leaf plants to create a natural net or blanket that will cover up the gaps in the plate, plus a hut out in the deep jungle is going to have all kinds of stuff growing on the walls and roof. There's a little fire off to one side, which, now that I'm thinking about it, is kind of unnecessary considering, according to the smoking chimney, there's a perfectly good fire inside. Oh well. Oftentimes, realism takes a backseat to aesthetic and story when it comes to art, and that's all part of the fun. Even though the ground's going to be covered by foliage, I first want to lay down a layer of 1x plate to break up all the smoothness and make it look more realistic. Next, in go the roots of some trees. We all know and love the mighty iconic trees towering over the beaches of Kashyyyk, but those aren't really going to fit here, plus we also see smaller ones. So I'm going to add some little trees lining the riverbank to provide cover for a separatist ambush and because of the jungle. Lining the riverbank are an assortment of other plants. I like to group certain types of plants together in certain places, just like what you see in real life. You have lush aquatic type plants near water and grass and other sage-like plants in more arid climates. I've been having a lot of success using dinosaur tails and tree trunks, so that's what's going in today. Brick-built tree trunks are something I really want to improve upon, but still need to practice more before they start showing up in videos again. At last, I get to add the juggernaut cruising through the river and pull out your notepads for this big brain water technique. All I gotta do now is sprinkle in the figs and this mock is ready for action. Whispers of a separatist presence on the vital world of Kashyyyk have reached the Republic's ears, and fearing a droid attack on the Wookiees, Kit Fisto and the 91st Recon have been dispatched to perform some recon. Pushing deep into the dense jungles would have been nearly impossible if it weren't for the clone's newest ride, the Juggernaut. Faster than an ATTE and able to run over / crush just about anything in its path, these behemoths have allowed the clones to penetrate deep into uncharted territory using the wide rivers to navigate around. This squad has just stopped to ask an old Wookiee hermit if he's seen any separatist activity and apologize for decimating his dock when suddenly the trees come alive with droids. In a rare showing of competence, a deadly ambush has been sprung. Droids swing out of the trees via vines to board the tank, though they have about as much skill as an acrobat as they do fighting Jedi, so most aren't gonna make it. But they're just a distraction. Further back in the trees, a commando droid takes aim and fires a rocket straight at the Juggernaut's front cockpit. The clones came prepared though, as Master Kit Fisto leaps off the tank, preparing to disable the projectile. Meanwhile, Commander Neo and the rest of his squad leap into action, cutting down any droids they can find, hoping to capture at least one so they can ascertain the whereabouts of the droid base camp. Let me tell you, the real challenge of this video wasn't the Mocs, it was just getting the video done. I'm in the midst of a real wintertime slump, so the fact that I even got this video out on time is a win. Kashyyyk is right up there with Naboo in regards to cool places to build, and it was fun to explore the different biomes. I do really need to pick up some more Wookiees though. If you want a more in-depth mock video to enjoy, check out my latest episode of building an Imperial base on Mimban. I'm much more excited about that, and things are really starting to heat up as I near the end. Thankfully, this video is over. Don't forget to let me know what you think of the Mocs down below in the comments, and I will catch you next time, but until then, happy building.